A freezing wind cut through the abandoned subway tunnel, slicing past broken concrete and rusting steel beams. Rynn curled tighter beneath her tattered blanket, pulling it up to shield her face from the bitter night. It had once been white, long ago, before the city stole everything from her. Now, it was a patchwork of grime, torn edges, and memories she barely held on to. The cold had become an old companion, pressing into her bones like a second skin. Somewhere outside, neon lights flickered, casting eerie glows through gaps in the crumbling infrastructure. The city above pulsed with life, hover cars whispering across the skyline, automated billboards flashing corporate propaganda. But down here, beneath the streets, the world was silent. Forgotten. A sound broke through the quiet. A whimper. Faint, weak. Rynn turned her head sharply, every muscle tensing. Years of surviving in the underbelly had honed her instincts. Noise can mean danger. But this sound, it wasn't the clatter of boots from a cleansing patrol or the metallic scrape of drones searching for vagrants. This was different. She pushed herself up on shaking limbs, hunger gnawing at her insides. Her fingers, cracked and aching from exposure, found the cold concrete as she moved toward the sound. In the dim glow of a malfunctioning street lamp overhead, she saw it. A dog. It lay curled near the rusted tracks, its thin body trembling with every shallow breath. Patches of fur were missing, revealing raw, scarred skin. Its ribs pressed against its flesh, its eyes, hollow, desperate, locked onto hers. Rynn hesitated. Kindness was a luxury she couldn't afford. Every scrap of warmth, every morsel of food had to be fought for, hoarded. But the dog didn't beg. It simply stared, as if it had already accepted its fate. She cursed under her breath and stripped the blanket from her shoulders. The cold bit instantly, a cruel reminder of what little she had left. Still, she moved forward, draping the fabric over the shivering animal. The dog flinched at first, then slowly pressed into the warmth. "You're not going to make it out here," she murmured, more to herself than the creature. The dog let out a slow breath, curling deeper into the blanket's folds. Rynn exhaled sharply and leaned against the wall. She'd figure out a way to keep warm. She always did. The distant hum of engines sent a spike of fear through her chest. She stiffened, eyes darting toward the entrance of the tunnel. The cleansing units. They were close. A series of blue lights flickered beyond the crumbled stairwell, illuminating the damp walls. The city didn't like reminders of its failures. It dealt with them the only way it knew how: erasure. Rynn moved fast, scooping the dog into her arms despite her exhaustion. It whined but didn't resist, too weak to protest. She barely had the strength to carry herself, but leaving it behind wasn't an option. She pushed forward, feet slipping on the uneven ground. The tunnel opened into a maze of old sewer passages, the air thick with decay. She could navigate these routes blind if she had to. Behind her, the mechanical hiss of a drone echoed through the tunnels. Her pulse hammered. She took a sharp turn down a passageway barely wide enough for her shoulders. Water dripped from above, catching the blue light of the patrol scanning the depths. The dog pressed against her chest, its heartbeat rapid, mirroring her own. She pressed herself against the damp wall, forcing her breath to steady. The drone hovered just beyond the bend, its scanner pulsing in rhythmic waves. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then, just as suddenly as it arrived, the drone veered away, its sensors failing to detect life in the cold. Rynn didn't wait. She pushed off the wall, her legs screaming in protest as she moved deeper into the underground. The city had tried to erase her more times than she could count, but she wasn't gone yet. And now, neither was the dog. The tunnels stretched endlessly, their walls slick with condensation and graffiti, so old it had begun to erode into the stone. Rynn forced her aching legs to keep moving, clutching the trembling dog against her chest. The cold wrapped around her like an iron vice, leeching what little warmth remained in her body. She could still hear the distant hum of the drone, the mechanical predator hunting for signs of life. If she stopped, even for a moment, she knew the city's enforcers would find her. And this time, they wouldn't miss. The dog whimpered against her, a weak, pitiful sound that sent a pang through her chest. She tightened her hold. "Not now," she whispered. "Just a little further." The tunnel floor sloped downward, leading into a network of old sewer lines. Rynn knew these passages well enough to navigate in near darkness. But tonight, she wasn't alone. Every sound, every movement had to be measured, precise. She slowed her pace, pressing herself against the damp wall as she listened. Nothing but the distant drip of water. The city above was a machine, cold and efficient, but down here, it was as though the world had been abandoned entirely. She turned a corner and nearly collapsed as exhaustion clawed at her muscles. The weight of the dog, the freezing air, the hunger gnawing at her ribs, it was too much. But stopping meant death. A faint glow flickered ahead. Rynn's breath caught. For a moment, she thought it was another patrol drone, but the light was too warm, too unsteady. Fire. She crept forward, muscles tensed, ready to run. The tunnels had their own dangers, scavengers, deserters, and the desperate. The kind of people who wouldn't hesitate to take what little she had left. But she had no choice. The space opened into a chamber lined with broken cinder blocks and makeshift beds of torn fabric. A barrel fire burned at its center, casting erratic shadows against the walls. She wasn't alone. A group of figures lingered near the fire, their faces hidden by hoods and scarves. Rynn's grip tightened on the dog, but her legs swayed, her vision blurring at the edges. Hunger, exhaustion, it all came crashing down at once. A tall man stepped forward. His face was partially covered by a tactical mask, but his eyes were sharp, analyzing, calculating. He didn't move like a vagrant. He moved like someone used to danger. "Who are you?" His voice was low, edged with suspicion. Rynn's mouth was dry. She had no lies to tell, no story to weave. All she had was the truth, stripped down to its barest form. "I don't want trouble." Her voice cracked. "I just need," she staggered. The world tilted. The last thing she felt was strong arms catching her before the darkness took over. She awoke to warmth. Not much, but enough. A thin blanket had been thrown over her, and somewhere close, a fire crackled. The smell of something, food, drifted through the air. Her body ached, but for the first time in days, she wasn't freezing. The dog. She sat up too fast, the sudden movement sending a wave of dizziness through her skull. A shape stirred beside her. The dog lay curled in a nest of rags, breathing slowly. It was alive. "You were half dead when we found you." Rynn turned. The man from earlier stood near the fire, his arms crossed. His face was still partially obscured, but now she could see the scar running down his cheek, old and jagged. She swallowed, her throat raw. "Where am I?" "A safe place." He crouched down, leveling his gaze with hers. For now, Rynn didn't believe in safe places. Not in this city. "Who are you?" "Kael." The name meant nothing to her. She pushed the blanket off, forcing herself upright. Every muscle screamed in protest, but she ignored it. "I should go." "Go where?" Kael's eyes flicked to the dog. "You barely made it here. If you walk out now, you won't last another night." She hated that he was right, but staying meant trust, and trust was a dangerous thing. Kael seemed to sense her hesitation. He exhaled, leaning back on his heels. "That dog of yours, he's not just any stray." Rynn frowned. "What are you talking about?" Kael gestured, and one of the others, an older woman with a shaven head, stepped forward. She held a small device, sleek and metallic. "We scanned him while you were out." A cold pit settled in Rynn's stomach. "Scanned him for what?" Kael didn't answer. Instead, he reached for the dog, pulling back the fur near its neck. Beneath the grime and scars, something gleamed. A metallic implant. Ryn's pulse pounded. What? He's a prototype, Kael said. Military grade. Experimental. And the people who made him, they'll do anything to get him back. The room fell silent. The fire crackled, throwing flickering shadows against the walls. Ryn looked down at the dog, at Echo. The creature that had been dying in her arms just hours ago. The creature she had nearly sacrificed everything for. And now he was a target. She clenched her fists, forcing down the rising fear. Then we run. Kael shook his head. You don't get it. If they find him, they find us. And if we're lucky, they'll kill us fast. Ryn met his gaze. And if we're not? Kael's expression darkened. They'll take him. And they'll take you too. The air in the underground chamber had turned heavy, thick with something unspoken. Ryn could feel it pressing in, a weight settling in her chest. Kael's words still echoed in her mind. They'll take him. And they'll take you too. Echo lay curled beside her, his breathing slow, steady. He didn't understand the danger, or maybe he did, in his own way. Ryn ran a hand over his fur, fingers grazing the metal implant embedded beneath his skin. She had risked everything to save him, and now it turned out she had been holding on to something far more dangerous than a stray. Kael's people were watching her. She could feel their stares, measuring, calculating. They had let her stay, let her warm herself by their fire, but that didn't mean they trusted her. And she didn't trust them. We need to leave, she said finally, breaking the silence. Kael exhaled through his nose, something like frustration flickering behind his sharp gaze. You think it's that simple? I didn't ask for this. She gestured toward Echo, toward the implant glinting beneath his fur. I didn't ask for any of this. No one asks, Kael said, voice edged with something bitter. It doesn't change the fact that you're in it now. Ryn pushed herself to her feet, her body still weak, but fueled by something stronger than exhaustion. She had spent too many nights running, too many nights freezing and starving in the dark. But this was different. If what Kael said was true, if Echo really was as valuable as he claimed, then running wouldn't be enough. Kael studied her for a long moment before finally sighing. There might be a way to end this. But it's risky. Ryn crossed her arms. Define risky. He turned toward the fire, shadows dancing across his scarred face. There's a facility, he said, deep in the corporate sector. Black site. Off the grid. It's where they developed assets like him. He nodded toward Echo. If there's a way to erase their tracking systems, to wipe him clean, it's there. Ryn frowned. And what happens if we fail? Kael's expression didn't change. Then they get what they want. And we don't walk out. Silence settled between them. The fire crackled, throwing erratic shapes across the walls. Ryn glanced down at Echo, at the way his ears twitched in his sleep. He had trusted her. She had given him warmth when no one else would. And now, he had given her something in return. A purpose. She looked back at Kael. When do we leave? The city loomed above them, a towering labyrinth of steel and neon. Ryn pulled the hood of her stolen jacket lower, trying to disappear into the flood of bodies moving through the lower district. The air smelled of burnt metal and synthetic food, the sounds of hovercrafts humming overhead. Kael walked beside her, his movements precise, measured. He belonged here in a way she never could. Another ghost in the system, slipping between cracks too small for the city's eyes to notice. Echo trotted close at Ryn's side, the metal implant now covered by a strip of cloth, a poor disguise but the best they had. They moved fast, weaving through alleys and side streets, away from the main surveillance points. Kael had warned her that security had tightened. Word had spread of a fugitive carrying stolen military assets. The enforcers were already searching. As they neared the corporate sector, the streets changed. Gone were the grimy alleyways and flickering streetlights. Here, everything was pristine, smooth metal walkways, towering glass buildings reflecting the endless advertisements flashing above. It was a world apart from the one Rynn had known, a world that had never spared a second glance at people like her. Kael led her toward an old service tunnel beneath, a transport hub. "This leads into the lower levels of the facility," he said, scanning the entrance. "It won't be unguarded." Rynn tightened her grip on Echo's leash. "I didn't expect it to be." They slipped inside. The tunnel was narrow, lined with exposed wiring and pipes hissing with steam. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of rust. Kael held up a hand, signaling her to stop. A faint red glow pulsed from a sensor embedded in the wall ahead. "Laser grid. If we trip it, the whole place locks down." Rynn exhaled through her nose. "So what's the plan?" Kael smirked. "We improvise." He pulled a small device from his jacket, a sleek, matte black square no bigger than his palm. He pressed it against the sensor, the screen flickering with scrolling lines of code. The red glow faded. "Move," he said. They pressed forward, deeper into the belly of the facility. The walls became smoother, the air colder. The hum of machines filled the silence, a steady pulse like the heartbeat of a mechanical beast. Then they heard voices. Kael motioned for her to stay back as he peered around the corner. Two enforcers stood near a security terminal, their sleek black armor reflecting the dim light. Their weapons were holstered, but Rynn knew that meant nothing. Kael leaned back, whispering, "We take them out quietly." Rynn nodded. She had no weapon, but she didn't need one. She had spent enough nights fighting for scraps, enough nights learning how to move unnoticed. Kael moved first, swift and silent. He was on the first enforcer before the man even registered the movement, a quick strike to the throat cutting off any chance of alarm. The second enforcer turned, too slow. Rynn was already behind him, using his own momentum against him. She drove her knee into the back of his leg, sending him sprawling. Before he could shout, Kael finished it. Rynn let out a slow breath. Her pulse thundered in her ears, but she forced herself to stay calm. They weren't out yet. Kael motioned toward the security terminal. "This is it." Rynn stepped forward, Echo pressing against her side. Kael worked fast, fingers flying over the interface, bypassing layers of encrypted data. Then the alarms blared. Red lights flashed overhead. A mechanical voice echoed through the corridor. "Unauthorized access detected. Lockdown initiated." Rynn spun toward Kael. "What happened?" "Someone overrode the system," he growled. "They knew we were coming." Footsteps thundered down the hall. Echo let out a low growl, his body tense. Rynn's mind raced. They had minutes, maybe less, before the enforcers arrived. Kael grabbed a small drive from the terminal, shoving it into his jacket. "We have what we need. Now we get out." But as they turned to run, a new voice cut through the chaos. "Going somewhere." Rynn froze. At the end of the corridor stood a figure clad in black combat armor, a sleek rifle resting at his side. His face was obscured by a visor, but the voice was unmistakable. "Rhys." Kael's expression darkened. "You sold us out." Rhys tilted his head. "Don't take it personally. The bounty was too good to pass up." Rynn's hands clenched into fists. The firelight in the underground refuge, the uneasy glances, the way Rhys had always lingered just a little too close. She should have seen it. Behind Rhys, more enforcers poured in, weapons raised. Kael tensed. "We're out of time." Rynn's pulse pounded. The mission was compromised, the way out cut off, and the only choice left was to fight. The world slowed. Rynn could hear her heartbeat hammering in her ears, could feel the heat of adrenaline flooding her limbs. Echo stood beside her, his body low, muscles coiled. The enforcers raised their weapons. She counted 6. Maybe more. Too many. Rhys took a step forward, the overhead lights reflecting off his visor. "Don't do anything stupid, Rynn." His voice was calm, almost amused. "I'll make this easy. You hand over the asset, and I'll let you walk out of here. No pain, no mess." Rynn didn't believe him. People like Rhys never let things go clean. He would take Echo, take Kael, take her, and make sure none of them were ever seen again. She shifted slightly, just enough to put herself between Echo and the rifles pointed at them. That's not happening. Rhys sighed. You always did make things difficult. Then he raised his hand, fingers curling into a silent signal. The enforcers moved. Kael reacted first. A flash of motion, his pistol snapping up, a single, precise shot. One enforcer dropped before he could fire. Chaos erupted. Rynn lunged, grabbing the fallen man's weapon as bullets screamed through the air. She rolled, bringing the rifle up just as another enforcer swung his aim toward her. She fired. The recoil jolted through her shoulder, but the shot hit home. Echo darted between them, faster than any normal dog should have been. He lunged, teeth flashing, tearing into the leg of an enforcer who howled in agony. A second later, Kael was there, finishing the job with brutal efficiency. Rhys cursed. Contain them. More enforcers poured in from the corridor, their armored boots pounding against the floor. Ryan's mind raced. They couldn't win this fight. Not like this. They needed a way out. Kael, she shouted over the chaos. The terminal. Can you override the lockdown? Kael shot another enforcer before diving back toward the security console. His fingers moved in a blur over the screen. Buying us a back door. Just keep them off me. Rynn turned, pulling Echo back just as a burst of gunfire tore through the air. She dropped low, pressing herself against a supply crate as bullets sparked against the metal. Rhys was advancing now, methodical, a predator closing in. I don't need you alive, Rynn, he called. I just need the dog. Ryan's grip tightened around her weapon. She wasn't going to let them take him. Not after everything. Echo growled beside her, his ears flat. There was no hesitation in his stance, no fear. Rynn took a breath, forcing her mind to steady. One shot. That was all she needed. She popped up from cover, lined up her sights. Rhys was faster. He fired. Agony ripped through her side. She staggered, the impact like fire searing through her ribs. The world wavered. Rynn. Kael's voice was distant, drowned beneath the ringing in her skull. She dropped to one knee, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Rhys loomed over her now, his rifle aimed at her head. Game over, he murmured. Before he could pull the trigger, Echo moved. A blur of motion, a snarl, deep and guttural. Echo leaped, his jaws locking onto Rhys's wrist. The enforcer let out a strangled yell as the dog's enhanced muscles sent him staggering backward. His rifle clattered to the ground. Rynn gritted her teeth, forcing herself upright. She ignored the pain, ignored the blood soaking into her jacket. She grabbed her rifle, steadied her breath, and fired. The bullet struck true. Rhys jerked, eyes wide, before crumpling to the floor. Silence. The remaining enforcers hesitated, their leader dead at their feet. That was all Kael needed. Doors open, he shouted. Move. Rynn didn't waste a second. She grabbed Echo, forcing her legs to move despite the pain. Kael was already ahead of her, leading them through a service corridor, now unlocked by his override. Behind them, shouts rang out, but no one pursued. Not yet. They ran, through the winding tunnels, through the dark, until the sounds of the facility faded behind them. Finally, they emerged into the night. Cold air hit Ryan's face like a slap, but she welcomed it. They were out. They were alive. Kael exhaled, glancing at her side. You're hit. I'll live, she said, pressing a hand against the wound. She turned to Echo, who was watching her with those sharp, knowing eyes. She ran a hand over his fur. You saved my life. He huffed, pressing his head against her chest. Kael sighed. So what now? Rynn looked up at the city, stretching out before them. They were still fugitives, still hunted. But for the first time in a long time, she wasn't running alone. She met Kael's gaze. Now, she said, we disappear,